Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. Happy Reuben Day. Happy International Reuben Day. I'm expecting the implications of the Reuben sandwiches. Have you guys had a Reuben sandwich before?
Yes.
Okay, so today we'll find out. It's actually very
it.
tasty. It's got like beef, pastrami, tomatoes and things like that. So we're expecting Reuben sandwiches all around.
Yes.
Good morning to you all. Morning, Ayo. Good morning,
Rufai.
Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Now, illegal migration is tearing the United Kingdom apart. That is what the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has announced as she unveils new measures, including asylum seekers waiting 20 years before they can seek permanent residency. Now, for asylum seekers, this 2-decade wait would replace the current 5-year pathway. The reforms to be detailed in Parliament today will also cut the initial grant of refugee status from 5 years to just 2.5 years, after which the status will be reviewed repeatedly. Now, if a refugee's home country is later deemed to be safe, they could be required to return. Now, Mahmoud described the measures as a moral mission to curb illegal immigration, migration, and unite, really, the United Kingdom amid soaring small boat crossings and record asylum claims. Let's take a listen to what Shabana Mahmood had to say about this.
New reforms will do is change that generations-old assumption that sanctuary provided to refugees can very quickly lead to permanent settlement and all of the rights that go alongside that. We will be changing that to a more temporary process, and the situation will be assessed every 2.5 years. So if your country becomes safe in that intervening period and you are remaining on this essentially core protection model, you will be returned to your country, because we see countries that have started off in conflict and people have moved in order to escape that conflict becoming safe. So I think that is right. And if you are working and contributing, you will be able to earn an earlier settlement in this country, and the totality of that package will promote fairness and contribution.
But just on that point,
well, the situation in relation to Ukraine, actually, that was a bespoke and always intended to be a temporary scheme.
So they would all have to go home if the country becomes peaceful.
To provide people with the respite because they're displaced by conflict. In fact, because it's a bespoke regime, they're not in fact considered refugees in the normal run of things. It is a bespoke scheme for Ukrainians, which I'm very proud that this country did, and we will always fulfill our obligations under that scheme. And of course, it is the wish of most of those Ukrainian individuals that one day they will return to Ukraine once the conflict is.
There's very interesting times ahead for the United Kingdom. But coming home to the African continent, and South Africa is investigating the unexpected arrival of 153 Palestinians arriving in Johannesburg on a chartered flight from Gaza. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa confirmed on Friday that the flight, which transited through the Kenyan capital Nairobi, did arrive without proper travel documents, prompting the Department of Home Affairs and the intelligence agencies to treat the incident as a possible case of human trafficking and unlawful entry. Now, the Palestinians have departure stamps missing on their passports. They don't have any return tickets, and they have no confirmed addresses in South Africa. Let's listen. Well, Ramaphosa did talk about how this is clearly an unusual situation happening in his country, but at this point, though there are going to be investigations ongoing, he is not going to turn them back. We also know that South Africa has been a rallying force behind Palestine, and we will take a listen to what Cyril Ramaphosa has to say right now.
Of the Palestinians who've been brought here is a matter, as I said, that we're paying attention to. We obviously need to look at the origins, where it started, the reason why they've been brought here. And ordinarily, we would have said they should go back because they didn't have any documentation. But out of empathy, out of compassion, and because they are a people that we as South Africa have raised our hands to support, we felt that we should accept them and process their matter. So their matter is being processed. We are discussing it. Our intelligence agency is involved, and the Home Affairs is involved, and DERCO is also involved. So we're going to do a proper evaluation and see what the future portends when it comes to this. So we will be dealing with it, and as I said, we will make an announcement so that the people of South Africa know precisely what is happening and how this matter came to be where it is.
So you can see the acceptance coming there from the South African president. Well, despite that acceptance, it has been reported by Israeli media, including Haaretz, that the flight was arranged by Al Majid Europe. It is a group linked to the former, to Toma, rather. His name is Toma Janah Lind. He is an Israeli-Estonian businessman, and it's believed that his organization offered Palestinians the option to pay about $2,000 for a spot on these charter flights to destinations such as Indonesia and, of course, South Africa. Now, Haaretz go on to report that it also learned that Israel's Voluntary Immigration Bureau in the Defense Ministry referred to that firm to the IDF for help to coordinate these departures. Now, critics have accused Israeli authorities of facilitating the removal of Gazans without exit stamps, stoking fears of a sponsored displacement scheme aimed at permanently emptying parts of Gaza. Well, staying in Africa, and the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have signed a new framework for peace in Gaza. Now, the signing took place in the Qatari capital Doha on Saturday, and it confirmed the latest attempt in this effort to stop the brutal fighting that has devastated the mineral-rich east part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, this agreement, it is known as the Doha Framework for a Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was witnessed by senior officials from both sides, the United States, Qatar, and representatives of the African Union. However, both delegations have stressed that the deal was a framework and not a final peace treaty, as mediators now face this task of turning this framework into concrete actions by securing humanitarian corridors and addressing the deep-seated grievances that have fueled this conflict. There's also going to be topics about prisoner exchanges as well. Now, the next round of talks is expected to start in the coming weeks. And then, from proposals for peace to outright protest, Gen Z-led demonstrations have rocked Mexico. Thousands of young Mexicans branding themselves Gen Z Mexico took to the streets across the country on Saturday and across the weekend to denounce a wave of mass killings and systemic impunity that's after the assassination of the anti-crime mayor Carlos Manzo on the 1st of November. His death sparked a nationwide outcry, with protesters linking his murder to broader failures in security, corruption, and government accountability. Now, in Mexico City, a core group of hooded demonstrators ripped down metal fences surrounding the National Palace. That is where President Claudia Sheinbaum resides. And the violence has also echoed in several cities, including Morelia and Guadalajara. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say about the World Brief. But first, let's take a look at our newspapers. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day Today. And This Day does lead with a report from the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, saying that President Tinubu has made ending violence in Plateau State a top national priority. Now, Tinubu has sent an emissary, Dr. Abiodun Essia, to the state to promote peace and intercommunal harmony. The APC has also welcomed several prominent politicians from opposition parties, which is again another signal of a major shift ahead of the 2027 elections. Meanwhile, you've got the DSS arresting an arms dealer linked to terrorist activities in that state, in Plateau, and neighboring areas too. Let's take a look at The Punch this morning. Now, The Punch does report on the US Congress holding a hearing on Nigeria's designation as a country of particular concern. This is, of course, over alleged attacks on Christians. Now, US President Donald Trump has threatened, as we know, sanctions and possible military action here in Nigeria, but President Tinubu has rejected the claims, insisting that Nigeria protects religious freedom. Meanwhile, as we noted on Thursday and earlier on, President Tinubu has sent a peace envoy to Plateau State, where a farm dispute we're hearing in Jos South between a herdsman and a farmer has been resolved. Now, the government says that new community-based peace structures aim to strengthen unity and prevent future conflicts. Well, let's move on to another paper. Let's take a look at the leadership this morning. Now, the leadership reports that the Northern Christian leaders and Miyetti Allah have praised President Tinubu for sending this special envoy to Plateau State in order for him to address the rising communal violence in that area. There's, of course, going to be a lot of dialogue and efforts to promote reconciliation in the state. That dispute, as we mentioned in Just South, was an example of that type of reconciliation, resolution, and the like. Let's move on to our next paper today. Let us move on and take a look at the New Telegraph. Meanwhile, the New Telegraph does report on the highlights rising tension on this US Resolution 860. This is as MACBAN being the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, and the US Congress demanding removal from proposed sanctions list. Now, the group rejects being ranked alongside Boko Haram and ISIS, insisting that it is a lawful pastoral association and a victim of insecurity itself and not a perpetrator. MACBAN says that more than 18,000 pastoralists have been killed and over 1 million displaced in the last decade. It also warns that labeling peaceful herders as militias risks inflaming tensions and undermining ongoing peace efforts in rural communities across Nigeria. Well, the Daily Trust, let's take a look at the Daily Trust today. The Daily Trust does report on another bloody weekend in Zamfara State. Unfortunately, that has bandits kill at least 3 people and abduct 64 others in Zamfara. We are hearing that this attack focused on a local community in the area. A gentleman was shot dead along the Gusau-Safe Road, and the attack did, of course, just come a day after the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, visited the state and announced fresh troop deployments. Now, witnesses to these attacks did say that the bandits have blocked the Gusau-Safe Road and later struck again near Gusau, abducting even more residents. So very unfortunate there. Now, the Daily Independent this morning has a whole host of stories. Now, the Daily Independent does report that the former PDP Deputy Chairman, Chief Olabode George, has said the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike cannot rejoin the party for 4 years unless he apologizes for his anti-party actions. Bode George went on to add that Wike's support for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu while still in the PDP was wrong. The party's expulsion decision made at this national convention will last 4 years, as we're hearing, but Wike could be forgiven if he shows genuine remorse. We're also seeing on the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper reports that stakeholders have urged the federal government to apologize and reconsider and even reverse its policy on cancelling the use of mother tongue languages in schools. You've got the likes of Dr. Peter Agudoro and Dr. Femi Mosaku Johnson describing the decision as hasty and poorly thought out. They say that teaching children in indigenous languages is vital for preserving Nigeria's heritage and culture, and that poor exam performance is more about weak teaching than the language of instruction. Now, they have warned that this policy could, of course, harm children's development and have called for urgent review and correction. Now, also on the Daily Independent, we are seeing reports of this fresh controversy trailing this arbitration between First Bank and GHL. Just on the front page of the Daily Independent in the top left-hand corner, it is revealing that this appointed arbitrator, retired Justice Kumai Bayang Akas, allegedly owns some 595,000 shares in First Holdco PLC. That is, of course, the parent company of First Bank. That is according to these reports in the newspaper. And this disclosure has triggered conversations and I guess concerns about a potential conflict of interest and the integrity of the arbitration process. So always a very interesting read there. And let's take a look at some UK papers today. We've got a double whammy. So we've got the Times and the Daily Mail, both of them looking at this story in terms of United Kingdom and their planned visa bans for different countries. So, for example, Angola, Namibia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are expected to be on this list if they refuse to take back illegal migrants. Now, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has also proposed limiting asylum appeals and family rights under human rights laws to speed up deportations. Now, the Times, however, it does go on to say that 3 countries that I mentioned have refused to accept the return of over 4,000 illegal migrants, which is prompting these sanctions. And the Daily Mail adds that lawyers, MPs, and human rights groups will be warning that this plan could breach human rights laws and harm settled migrants. Mahmood, as we've heard, insists that these reforms are necessary to control borders and to maintain sanctuary for genuine refugees. That is your well-briefed and your newspaper headlines from Nigeria and beyond. Love to hear your thoughts.
So I'd like to start by saying a quick happy birthday to a dear friend of mine, Toyosi and so forth. It was a birthday just yesterday with her twin brother, I should say. But moving on, if you look at the case of insecurity, you will see that it's a repetitive pattern. I'm happy Minister of Defense Matawale has said there are going to be multiple troop deployments. But I've got a question for Mr. Matawale this morning. Why was it that you had a lot of troops and NSCDC officials and other security officials when they were having elections for just about 5 wards or thereabout in Zamfara State, and you don't have that number of troops where there's actual insecurity? That's a question for him. Maybe the day he answers, I'll get an answer on that. And you can see the massive level of insecurity that goes on. So I want this government to do something about it. And how do you start? If government is actually genuine with the people, release the list of terrorist funders and sympathizers. We know that there was a list sent forward to the last administration from Dubai. Government is a continuum. This government cannot say they don't have that list. We need to start naming and shaming so that it's not longer cool to be associated. And for the likes of Sheikh Gumi that is inflaming the rhetoric, that is saying all sorts. Oh, they were empty caskets. Please, this government must stand tall. And we must do the needful. We must ensure that people that ratchet up the rhetoric, they must be asked very due questions. Secondly, as regards Congo, I don't think that deal is going to work. They had such a deal in July. It never worked.
Yes.
I don't think this is going to work. They just agreed on some terms.
Yes, it's a framework.
It's a framework.
Yes.
I heard the representative of the M23 speaking today.
Yes.
Till today, the representative of M23 does not want to acknowledge the fact that heinous crimes was committed by M23 rebels.
Absolutely.
So as long as they are denying, they will see this as a pretext to be able to attack the Congolese people. And he also denied that Rwanda is funding them. So as long as that denial is there, they can go to Doha for all they want and sit down and take photo-ops. It has not solved everything. If you go to the eastern part of Congo, there's still a lot of killings going on. So it is very hypocritical. It's just like the ceasefire deal in Israel and Gaza, where people are being killed in Gaza and Israel claims they have a ceasefire.
This is it.
It's also what Israel is doing now, trying to empty out Gaza. Organizing flights, collecting money from the Gaza people, fleecing them off to be able to ship them off. So that steadily, when they ship them off, people that are normally supposed to occupy their land, then they will bring Israeli inhabitants, go there in a replacement deal to be able to occupy those lands. We all know the game that is being played. That person, and I'm happy that Aretz did that wonderful investigative journalism job, that person is obviously tied to the Israeli government, and they don't want to take responsibility. That's why they didn't give them stamps. The flight originated from an Israeli airport. The question you should ask is, why didn't they have original stamps from where they were coming from? So it's Israel that is arranging all of this. It's part of the hypocrisy that is going on in the world.
This is it.
All right, let me start from here in Nigeria. Daily Independent front page had the story, and he talked about it. A number of newspapers today also continue the conversation around the new policy on indigenous language as a tool for teaching at basic education level. Now, the number of the policies by the Minister of Education, Dr. Lausa, has been quite controversial, you know, in terms of, number one, how relevant it is. Is this a priority area when we're talking about the rot in the education system in Nigeria and moving it forward? And so instead of this, I'd like to give some areas that are of particular concern if we're going to look at improving basic education in Nigeria. There are a number of things around the fact that there's a threat to literacy. We have a literacy problem in the country whereby people who finish from primary school are not able to read and write. So they give them a certificate, but they are not able to defend that certificate. We also have issues around out-of-school children in the north. This ties in significantly and heavily to insecurity. I hope that there will be policy direction on this particular matter that has plagued Nigeria for years and beyond, you know, successive governments. If we can fix that problem, it would be a priority area. We talk about teacher training. The fact that teachers in schools are not equipped or qualified enough to train our students. I'm just setting an agenda for him because there are certain areas that he has decided to pick that are not priority areas when we talk about improving the education, you know, sector in Nigeria. We also look at access to quality infrastructure. Areas whereby children who go to school do not even have desks to sit on to learn. We look at inclusion. They cannot compete with their counterparts around the world. So instead of looking at these areas that are, to be honest, not the key issues of education in Nigeria, let us look at the real problems and let him set out to fixing them. Then we can talk about the education ministry actually working for improving education in Nigeria. Now to the UK and immigration policy. First, let me establish the fact that when it comes to migration, asylum seekers are not the biggest problems in terms of the numbers of the United Kingdom. Economic and education migrants still make up their highest numbers. But you can understand the optics of it and how it sounds, especially if you're trying to counter the popularity of the Reform Party, which is what Labour is trying to do at this point. With this, there'll be a number of challenges to this, because one thing I'll just even touch on with regards to the 20-year push now is that they are saying that within that time, if the country is safer, they will return you back. If you are in your 19th year and your country is safer, how about the rights to find the life that you've been integrated into British culture, especially if you came in on asylum seeking at a young age? So there are a number of legal loopholes that Labour Party hasn't looked into properly. But I guess they just want to bring out a policy to counter the popularity of the Reform Party.
Thank you.
It's not going to work.
Shahana Mahmood says that the immigration policy of the Labour Party is out of control and pressure is being put on communities. And this is a conversation that has been on the table since this concern about this major hike under the Labour Party in small boat crossings. Every other measure that they have adopted has not worked. The latest one, adopted by the UK with France, is what they call the one-in, one-out policy. And despite the best intentions, Labour has been losing in the polls. And the fear is that the Reform UK party, led by Nigel Farage, is going to wrong foot the Labour Party in the next elections. Hence this desperation. However, what is being proposed by the Home Secretary is that one, even the Ukrainian program, the special program, providing home for Ukrainians is not safe. They too will be affected. If the situation in Ukraine improves, they will be returned home. Two, other asylum seekers, once it is considered safe, back wherever they were coming from, they will go back. The 5-year window that is given will be reduced to 2.5 years. Now, for you to get asylum, 5-year, threshold at the moment, that will be increased to 20 years. Now, about the laws, there will be an overhaul to start with as part of the proposal of the Modern Slavery Act, Article 2 of the European Convention, Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And that's why you find human rights groups already kicking, saying that, there will be human rights violations. One of the proposals, by Mahmoud, the Home Secretary, is that benefits, there will no longer be automatic benefits. Yes. And as those seeking asylum, their age will be determined with artificial intelligence. So you cannot come and lie about age and your relatives. That's that about that. As for Mexico, now I see a trend whereby the Gen Zs are fighting all over the world, whether it's in Nepal or Mexico or in Nigeria, as we saw with the NSAS protest. But the particular issue in Mexico has to do with violent crime, and particularly the recent killing of the mayor of Uruapan. The mayor of Uruapan, Carlos Manzo, was killed. And this was a man who was campaigning against the cartels, against drug cartels. And these young people in Mexico feel that President Sheinbaum, is not moving fast enough, and hence this protest. About 120 persons were killed, 100 of them are police officers. So Sheinbaum is under pressure from the United States and even from Peru. Peru is saying that that Mexico has granted asylum to a former prime minister who was accused of planning a coup. Now, as for South Africa, very quickly, there's a group called COGAT, which is involved in civilian, operations in Gaza. It gives exit slips. Now, a plane left Israeli territory arrived in Nairobi, moved from Nairobi to South Africa, and then the South African presidencies, we're going to investigate. Don't forget that South Africa in 2023 led the protest of genocide against Israel and going to the International Court of Justice. We all remember Operation Yonahan, Operation Thunderbolt, Operation Entebbe, when the Israelis, when they went to Kampala, Uganda, and had an operation. Could this be an Israeli operation? A message that, okay, since you people like the Palestinians so much, we'll come and dump them in your country. And the hands of President Ramaphosa is tied. He says, well, for humanitarian reasons, we can't reject them. Last month, another 170 Palestinians were shipped to South Africa. The President Ramaphosa says this is being investigated, and then we will be interested in what the outcome will be. Could this be a case of sabotage on the part of Israel, which still has questions to answer at the International Court of Justice as initiated by South Africa?